Alright, so let's be honest. I am a channel that talks about roleplay, and it seems that you guys really appreciate that, and I really appreciate that. I think there are plenty of channels out there that talk a ton about mechanics and numbers, and that's just not my style. So it's going to be a little bit weird for me to talk about this today, but I promise it is going to lead back into roleplay. I think that the numbers portion of D&D has been covered enough, but the roleplay portion hasn't a ton. And I really think this because a lot of the comments that I get on my videos kind of prove it to me. There's so many times where I talk about fun encounters or things that you could do, especially in my shorts, and the people who respond to those almost always have the same comments. I'll present this cool NPC and say, wouldn't this be fun for your characters to interact with? And the immediate response is, yeah, but what keeps my players from killing them? And it makes it very clear to me that D&D has gotten the killing part down. The role-playing part, maybe not so much, so I'm going to continue to talk about it. But today we're talking about something that is a little bit more mechanically based, and it's the idea of ability scores, which is a huge topic, so let's talk about that. Player Roll is a proud affiliate of 1985 Games, who is currently distributing their Dungeon Craft tiles, which are incredible. They sent me some of their sets that were from their Kickstarter campaign, and they're amazing, perfect for tossing in a bag and using for a one-shot. For all those times that a Dungeon Master just caught on the fly and doesn't know what to do, the Dungeon tiles are there to honestly save you a ton of time. If you want to check these out, or the rest of the incredible products that they have, please check the link in the description to help the channel out and get yourself some cool things. Anyways, back to the video. Okay, so ability scores. Ability scores are a core, quintessential part of D&D, right? I mean, like, you can't play a character without them. Your scores really affect who your character is. They affect your mechanics, they affect how you roleplay, they affect your roles. I mean, literally everything that you do is affected by your ability scores. You can't get around them. And because of that, a lot of people question the ability scores. Specifically, they question the types of ability scores that play into classes. See, it can be really frustrating when you want to play a certain archetype, but your class won't allow it. There was one time I really wanted to play a really cool blood hunter type character, or a witch hunter. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to be cleric, but I also kind of wanted to be fighter, but those two things don't mix so well together. Because as a fighter, you gotta have a good strength or dex as well as constitution, and then you also have a pretty decent wisdom for your cleric scores, and then depending on what kind of cleric score you have, sometimes you have to have something else as well, and it doesn't work so well, right? It can become what's referred to as MAD, multi-ability score dependent. And because of that, it's really hard to play the characters that we want sometimes. Imagine you want to play a super intelligent cleric. Well, there is an option for that. There's the Arcana Domain cleric, but if you want to play a super intelligent, well-versed storm cleric, you're kind of out of luck because yes, you can build wisdom and intelligence, but you're kind of nerfing yourself elsewhere. Especially if you're doing rolled stats and you don't roll super well. So because of that, a question comes up a lot. And that question is, what happens if I change an ability score that's core to a class? What does that mean?
World domination, right?
Well, what if I'm playing a monk, but I change the wisdom dependency to intelligence? Or what if I'm playing a bard, but I want to play a bard who's really good at, well, intelligent-like things. So instead of charisma-based, I'm intelligence. Or what if I'm playing a barbarian, but I don't really want things to be focused so much on my constitution, but instead I really want it to be focused on my dexterity? Well, that one's a little bit different than the rest. But you see what I'm saying, right? What happens when you change out those scores? Short answer? Nothing. Not really. Except for dexterity, and we'll get into that. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter if you change out those scores depending on your game. And that's the important thing to remember. Let me put it this way. Say I have a party of a wizard, a monk, a fighter, and a cleric, right? Okay, great. The wizard is obviously going to build into intelligence. But say the wizard comes to me and says, I really want my wizard to be more wizened than intelligent. Well, they could play a druid, but they're really settled on wizard, so we'll run with that. I could let them change the intelligence, but what did that just do? Mechanically, not a lot. It just means that they can shift their proficiencies around. They can be more focused on the wisdom proficiencies than the intelligence ones. That's really it, and that does not affect a lot. However, what I've also just done is I've also just changed the fact that now my party has 3 people building wisdom. We now have a wizard with a wisdom modifier, we now have a cleric with a wisdom modifier, we now have a monk with a wisdom modifier. Did I say all those classes? Pretend I said those classes. Regardless, we now have 3 people focused on wisdom and the fighter. And while yes, a party can make that work, absolutely 100%, you are stepping on toes just a little bit, and it becomes a little bit boring. Or say you have a rogue and a fighter and a bard and a wizard. And the bard doesn't want to be a charisma caster. They say, can I be a wisdom caster? Okay, sure, why not? Maybe the rogue was planning on making that really annoying build where they wanted to have alert, and they wanted to have proficiency in their perception, and they wanted to have expertise in it. In fact, they wanted to see everything. But the bard, now a wisdom caster, did the exact same thing. You see, it really depends, not on the game balance. It really doesn't. It depends on your party balance. The game can swap those ability scores around. It's true, it really won't affect much, but it really will affect your party. And so if you're going to do those sort of things, the only thing you need to do is look at your party and make sure that they are set and okay and comfortable with it. However, there is a caveat. That's all the mental stats. Wisdom, intelligence, and charisma, when it comes to the base stat score of a class, can be swapped around pretty easily. Dexterity, constitution, and strength are not interchangeable. Not in the slightest. And that's because they have mechanical benefits outside of just proficiencies. Dexterity affects your armor class, it affects your initiative. It is, as many people say, your god stat, because you can get an incredible to hit modifier, an incredible initiative modifier, and an incredible AC, all by putting into dexterity. So if you were to say swap out something important for dexterity, like my option earlier where I said a barbarian could swap their constitution for dexterity or the strength for dexterity, suddenly the barbarian is way more powerful, and that's pretty rough. Or say that you are playing somebody who wants to swap out constitution for something. Well, constitution affects your health. If your barbarian is going to remove constitution as one of their important things, well then they're not going to be nearly as tanky, and the barbarian kind of relies on that. Their abilities literally give people a better chance to hit them, so it's important that they have that health. And then there's strength. Strength in D&D, it's really kind of useless. It has almost no proficiencies attached to it. It gives you no benefit outside of the game except for carrying capacity, which very few games use these days. And so it's just kind of there. It was originally meant for carrying capacity, and carrying capacity used to be a huge portion of the game. It used to be very important because it was tracked, and it was important because if you couldn't carry everything, you didn't get all your loot. But these days, carrying capacity is hand-waved away because most people don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal that much with the numbers, they want to have fun at the game. And so, when 5th edition was first created, that was important for strength, but no longer. And so strength is kind of useless. So if you want to let your fighter swap out strength for something else, I mean, the fighter can already use dexterity, let's be honest. But say the rogue wants to swap from dexterity to strength. Well, that's gonna be pretty bad. Actually, there is one specific build you could do where you take expertise in athletics and then do a grappling build. You could actually do that. That sounds kind of funny. But the point is, swapping the physical ability scores around can have some serious consequences, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But with all that being said, why is it that I said that I was going to refer this to roleplay? Well, because when you make the decisions for these things, you do need to look at the party balance, but you also need to figure out, what does your player want to do? Do they just really want to play an intelligent warlock? Then let them. Figure out how to make it work with them, because that's the important thing. We want everybody to play the characters they want to be able to play. And if the mechanics are getting in the way of that, it literally says in the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Manual that you should ignore the rules to make everybody have fun.
Sometimes you have to ignore the rules, ignore the numbers, concentrate on the people.
Now that is important. Everybody needs to have fun. If making that change for one person is going to ruin it for everybody else, figure something out. But you shouldn't gatekeep them behind those rules. I personally love working within the rules. I don't have fun if people just let me break the rules. But it doesn't mean that I'm the only one in the world. There are other people who have different opinions, and we all just want to have fun. So if you want to swap around those ability scores, it's probably going to be okay. But work with your table, make sure everybody's okay with it, and most importantly, help your players play the characters they want to play. So go out into the world, make it your own, you beautiful bastards. Don't forget to have a great day, and never forget to play your role. A huge shout out to all those divine bastards over on our Patreon that helped make this video happen. Big D the Cool Guy, BKBW, Diet Blue, Duplicolor, Sassy Productions, Sorit, Supreme Court, Talia Martin, Tenai, Void Mystic, and Volpe Nico. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without our patrons, and we are very thankful for your continued support. You guys are the absolute best, and I will never take your support for granted.